The rain hammered against the windows of Landstuhl Regional Medical Center like bullets on steel. 2 in the morning, the kind of hour when the world holds its breath between yesterday's failures and tomorrow's possibilities. Dr. Richard Harrison stood in Trauma Bay 3, surgical gloves snapping against his wrists with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted himself. 15 years of cutting into bodies had given him that swagger. His colleague, Dr. Phillips, hovered nearby, younger but equally certain of his place in the hierarchy of men who saved lives. Neither of them noticed the woman who just pushed through the double doors. She was small, 5'3" in her standard-issue boots, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look fresh out of nursing school. Baby face, smooth skin, the kind of appearance that made people guess 19 when she was actually 25. She wore simple scrubs without rank insignia, without decoration, without any sign of the wars she'd survived. Sarah Mitchell moved like water through the chaos, silent, observing. Her blue eyes swept across the vital signs monitors with the precision of a sniper acquiring targets. Harrison noticed her then. His lip curled into something between amusement and contempt. "Honey, nursing station is down the hall," he said without looking away from the patient chart in his hands. "This area is for surgeons only. We're expecting critical incoming." Sarah didn't respond. She simply positioned herself beside the central monitoring station, her gaze fixed on the scrolling data streams that told stories in numbers and waveforms. Phillips chuckled. The sound echoed off the sterile walls like the bark of a small dog trying to sound dangerous. "First week on the job?" Phillips asked, his voice dripping with the kind of patronizing kindness that cuts deeper than insults. "You'll learn the protocols. For now, why don't you prep the recovery bay? We'll need beds ready when we bring these men back from surgery." Sarah's fingers traced the edge of the monitoring console, still silent, still watching. Her jaw set in a line that would have told wiser men to be careful. The overhead speakers crackled to life. "Trauma team to Bay 3, inbound military transport, 6 minutes out, multiple GSWs, multiple blast injuries, priority Alpha." Harrison's swagger faltered. Just a flicker, but Sarah saw it. The tightening around his eyes, the way his throat worked as he swallowed. The speakers crackled again. This time, a different voice, harder, colder. "This is Colonel Marcus Webb. Clear all non-essential personnel from Trauma Bay 3 immediately. We have 6 SEALs inbound from a classified operation in Syria. Heavy casualties. 1 Category Alpha, Commander James Morrison. Multiple penetrating trauma. He's circling the drain, people. You've got 1 shot at this." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah straightened. Something shifted in her posture. The mousy nurse disappeared, replaced by something else. Something that made both doctors take an unconscious step back. Harrison grabbed his surgical cap. "Phillips, scrub in. We need to set up for emergency thoracotomy." "Morrison, I know that name. Team 3. If we lose him..." "You won't lose him." Sarah's voice cut through the room like a scalpel through flesh. Low, calm, absolute. Harrison spun. "Excuse me? I don't know who you think you are, but..." The doors burst open. 6 gurneys rolled in simultaneously, pushed by combat medics whose uniforms were stained dark with blood that wasn't their own. The smell hit next, copper and cordite, the signature scent of men who'd been to hell and dragged themselves back. The first 5 gurneys rolled past into adjacent bays. Combat medics called out vitals in the clipped language of battlefield medicine. The 6th gurney stopped in Bay 3. Commander James Morrison lay motionless, 42 years old, 200 pounds of muscle and scar tissue that told the story of 2 decades at war. His face was the color of old concrete. An emergency intubation tube jutted from his mouth. His chest barely moved. The combat medic's voice shook. "Commander James Morrison, multiple GSWs, entrance wound, right chest, no exit. Second wound left upper quadrant abdomen, BP 70/40 and dropping. Heart rate 1:30. Oxygen sat 82%. He coded twice on the flight. We got him back both times, but the medic's voice broke. He's got maybe 10 minutes, Doc. Maybe. Harrison stared at the monitor. His hands trembled. Pneumothorax, he muttered. We need to. I need to. His voice climbed an octave. Where's the chest tube kit? You're holding the chest tube wrong. Every head in the bay turned to Sarah. She stepped forward. No hesitation. No permission requested. Fifth intercostal space, mid-axillary line, she continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. And his liver is shredded. You need to cross-clamp the hepatic artery first, or he'll exsanguinate in 4 minutes. Harrison's face flushed red. Who the hell do you think you are? Security! Stand down, Harrison. Colonel Marcus Webb entered the trauma bay like a cold front moving through summer heat. 58 years old, silver hair cut high and tight, eyes that had seen too many body bags. He looked at Sarah. Something passed between them. Recognition. Respect. History. Dr. Mitchell is taking over, Webb said flatly. The silence that followed could have swallowed the world. Dr. Mitchell? Harrison's mouth opened and closed. That's impossible. She looks like she's Captain Sarah Mitchell, MD, FACS, Webb interrupted. Former Chief Trauma Surgeon for the 75th Ranger Regiment. Forward Surgical Team Alpha, Afghanistan. 2 tours, 147 combat surgeries, 98% survival rate. Youngest military surgeon ever to perform a damage control laparotomy under fire. Webb's eyes never left Harrison's face. She's forgotten more about battlefield trauma than you'll learn in your entire career, Doctor. Now get out of her way. Sarah was already moving. Her hands flew across the supply trays with the efficiency of a machine built for one purpose. 10-blade scalpel, Balfour retractor, vascular clamps. I need O-negative blood, 6 units, FFP 4 units. Get me a Cordis kit and a transvenous pacer. Move. The nursing staff erupted into coordinated chaos. Sarah bent over Morrison. Her hands touched his chest with surprising gentleness. She closed her eyes for just a moment, reading the body like Braille. We're going in. Full trauma protocol. Propofol and fentanyl for sedation. Rocuronium for paralysis. She opened her eyes. They were ice now, Arctic blue, and just as merciless. And someone get me classical music. Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, Winter. A nurse blinked. Music, Doctor? Sarah's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I work better with a soundtrack. The opening notes of Vivaldi filled the trauma bay as Sarah's blade made its first cut. The surgery took 4 hours and 17 minutes. Sarah worked with a kind of precision that seemed almost supernatural. Every movement deliberate, every decision made without hesitation. Her hands moved through Morrison's chest cavity like she could see in the dark. The 7.62 millimeter round had entered just below his right clavicle. It had tumbled through muscle and bone, shredding his lung. The second round had torn through his liver and nicked his splenic artery. Together, they were a death sentence. Sarah didn't see it that way. Her hands moved, clamping, suturing, repairing tissue with stitches so precise they looked like mechanical work. More suction. I need visualization of the retroperitoneum. There, see that bleeder? Going to need a running suture, 5-0 proline. Blood pooled in the surgical field. Sarah's hands never wavered. Liver's worse than I thought, she muttered. Partial hepatectomy. Going to have to remove about 30%. The vital signs wavered, blood pressure dropping. 2 more units of blood, Sarah ordered, and push 1 of epi. The numbers on the monitor climbed, stabilized. Morrison's body fought back against death with stubborn determination. Sarah worked on. Minutes became an hour became 2. Vivaldi gave way to Bach, then Beethoven. At hour 3, Morrison's heart stopped. The monitor's tone changed from rhythmic beeping to a single, sustained scream. V-fib, a nurse called out. Harrison, watching from the observation window, grabbed the intercom. D-fib, get the paddles on him now. Negative. Sarah's voice carried no stress, no fear, just that same absolute certainty. His chest is open. External defibrillation would fry his exposed heart. Internal paddles, 20 joules. She reached into Morrison's chest cavity. Her hand closed around his heart. She began to squeeze, rhythmic, steady, manually pumping blood through a body that had given up. Paddles ready, doctor. Clear. The shock made Morrison's body jerk. The monitor stayed flat. Again, 30 joules. Clear. Nothing. Sarah's jaw tightened. She went back to manual compression. Her face remained impassive, but something flickered in her eyes. Something old and painful. Come on, Commander, she whispered. Don't you quit on me. Your men are watching. She squeezed harder, faster. You were in Mogadishu, Battle of the Black Sea, 19 years old, bleeding out in a helicopter. A Delta Force operator carried you 2 miles under fire. Her voice strengthened. That operator was my father, General David Mitchell. He didn't carry you through hell so you could die in a German hospital. So you're going to beat. You're going to beat right now. That's an order, Commander. Morrison's heart twitched. The monitor beeped. Once, twice. A rhythm established itself. Weak, but present. Morrison's heart beat again. Sarah closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, they glistened. There you are, she said softly. Welcome back. The rest of the surgery proceeded without incident. Sarah closed the chest and abdomen with the same meticulous care she'd shown opening them. Every stitch perfect. When she finally stepped back from the table, her scrubs were soaked through with sweat and blood. Her hair had come loose from its ponytail. She looked exhausted. She looked magnificent. Commander Morrison is stable, she announced to the room. Transport to ICU. Continuous monitoring. I want labs every 4 hours. If anything changes, anything at all, you page me immediately. Understood? A chorus of, yes, doctor, followed her as she stripped off her gloves. Colonel Webb met her at the scrub sink. He handed her a towel without speaking. They stood in silence while Sarah washed blood from her hands. The water ran red, then pink, then clear. You saved his life, Webb finally said. I did my job. No, you did something beyond that. Sarah dried her hands slowly, methodically. I've seen plenty of death, Colonel, more than enough. I know, I read your file. Afghanistan, FOB Shank. 14 Rangers wounded in a Taliban rocket attack. You operated for 29 hours straight, saved 11 of them. Sarah's hands stopped moving. 3 died. 11 lived. I held a 19-year-old kid's hand while he bled out because we didn't have the right blood type in stock. Sarah's voice cracked, just slightly. His name was Daniel Chen. He wanted to be a teacher when he got home. Social studies, high school. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Your father was Delta Force, one of the originals. Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm. I know what my father was. Then you know he'd be proud of what you did tonight. Sarah turned away. My father's dead, Colonel. Heart attack, 67 years old. 2 months after I left the service. 2 months after Daniel Chen died in my hands. She took a shuddering breath. You want to know why I left? That's why. Because I couldn't save them both. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Some surgeon I turned out to be. Sarah, don't, she held up a hand. I came back because you asked, because you said wounded men needed help. I did the job. Now I'm done. Tomorrow I'm on a plane back to Montana, back to my cabin where the only thing I have to worry about is chopping firewood. She walked away before Webb could respond. The ICU was quiet at 9 p.m. Sarah walked the halls like a ghost, unable to sleep despite 40 hours without rest. She found herself outside Morrison's room without consciously deciding to go there. He lay motionless in the bed. Tubes ran from his body to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical life. His face was peaceful, almost serene. Sarah slipped into the room. She pulled up a chair beside his bed. For a long time, she just sat there, watching the rise and fall of his chest, counting the beats of his heart on the monitor. Her hand reached out to touch the chain around her neck. She pulled it out from under her scrubs. A small medallion hung from the chain. Gold, worn smooth with handling. A challenge coin. The kind that special operations units give to their own. This one was older, the engraving nearly worn away, but Sarah could still make out the Delta Force insignia. And on the back, barely visible, SGM David Mitchell, De Oppresso Liber, to free the oppressed. He was the best man I ever knew, she whispered to the unconscious Morrison. My father, he could field strip an M4 blindfolded, could shoot a grouping at 1,000 yards that you could cover with a playing card. But you know what his real gift was? He could look at a situation, any situation, and find the one solution that saved the most lives. She smiled sadly. He taught me that. Said surgery was just another kind of tactics. You assess the battlefield. You identify the objective. You execute with precision. And you never, ever leave a man behind. Her voice cracked. But I did leave men behind, Commander. 3 men in Afghanistan. And then I lost him too. So I left the service. Because what's the point of all this training, all this skill, if you can't save the people who matter most? She stood to leave. A hand caught her wrist. Sarah's head snapped down. Morrison's eyes were open, barely, just slits of consciousness fighting through the morphine fog. His lips moved. She leaned closer to hear. Mitchell, the word was barely a breath. You're General Mitchell's daughter. Sarah froze. How do you know that? Morrison's eyes found the coin around her neck. Recognition sparked. That coin, he gave me one. Mogadishu said, if I ever needed, Delta Force, call the number, engraved on the back. His hand moved slowly, painfully to his neck. He wore a chain too. An identical coin hung from it. He saved my life. 19 years old. Thought I was going to die. Black Hawk crashed, bleeding everywhere. And this soldier came out of nowhere, picked me up, carried me, wouldn't let me quit. Morrison's voice strengthened slightly. Said his daughter, back home, would kick his ass if he came back without bringing all his boys home too. A tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. Morrison's hand moved, slowly, trembling with effort. He raised it to his forehead. A salute, weak but unmistakable. Your father, best man I ever knew. You have his hands, steady under fire. His eyes drifted closed again. You saved my life, just like he did. Thank you. The door opened. Colonel Webb stood in the frame. His face was grim. Captain Mitchell, we need to talk, now. Sarah followed him to a secure conference room 3 floors down, the kind of room with reinforced walls and frequency jammers. A video screen dominated one wall, currently showing the seal of the Department of Defense. Colonel, I told you. This isn't a request, Captain. Sit down. Sarah sat. The screen flickered to life. A woman appeared, early 50s, steel gray hair, eyes that could cut glass, 2 stars on her uniform collar. Captain Mitchell, the woman said, I'm General Catherine Marks, Defense Intelligence Agency. Thank you for saving Commander Morrison's life tonight. He's one of our best. I was doing my job, General. Your job ended 14 months ago when you resigned your commission. This is something different. This is a matter of national security. And whether you like it or not, you're the only person qualified to handle it. A second screen activated. A photo appeared. A woman, mid-30s, Slavic features, intelligent eyes. This is Dr. Elena Volkov, former Soviet bioweapons researcher. She defected 6 weeks ago with information about a biological weapons program being developed by a terrorist organization called Red Crescent. Commander Morrison's team was sent to extract her from Syria 3 days ago. The screen changed. Battlefield footage, night vision, explosions, men shouting. The extraction went sideways, ambush, heavy casualties. Morrison's team got Dr. Volkov out, but at significant cost. 6 men wounded. Dr. Volkov herself sustained injuries during the firefight. Another image, medical examiner's photo, Dr. Volkov on a steel table, dead. She died 2 hours ago from her wounds. But before she lost consciousness, she said something. 3 words. Audio played. A woman's voice, weak, accented, barely audible over helicopter rotors. The Reaper, Kandahar, American. Then silence. Sarah leaned forward. The Reaper? That's a call sign? We believe so. The reference to Kandahar suggests someone with operational history in Afghanistan. And American? She's saying an American is involved with this bioweapons program? General Marks nodded slowly. We believe Dr. Volkov was trying to tell us that there's a traitor, someone on our side, someone who's been helping Red Crescent develop a weapon that could kill millions. The screen changed again. A close-up of Dr. Volkov's body, an incision mark on her abdomen. Here's where you come in, Captain. Dr. Volkov was a genius. She knew we'd capture her body, so she hid something. We did a preliminary scan. There's a foreign object inside her abdominal cavity. We think it's a data storage device, but extracting it requires someone with very specific skills. Someone who can perform microsurgery on a deceased body that's been exposed to God knows what biological agents. Someone who can work in a BSL for containment environment. Sarah shook her head. No, Colonel, I told you. The device she's carrying contains the formula for a modified smallpox virus, resistant to all known vaccines. 70% mortality rate, airborne transmission. If Red Crescent releases this weapon in a major population center, we're looking at casualties in the millions within weeks. The room fell silent. Sarah stared at the screen, at the dead woman who'd tried to warn them. How long do I have? She finally asked. 48 hours before decomposition makes the extraction impossible. And if I refuse? General Marks leaned forward. Then millions of people die, Captain Mitchell. Maybe tens of millions. Is that really how you want to honor your father's memory? By walking away when the world needs you most? Sarah closed her eyes. She saw Daniel Chen's face, saw her father's funeral, saw all the ghosts that haunted her dreams. She opened her eyes. I'll need a full surgical team, BSL-4 certified, and I want Morrison monitoring via video feed if he's conscious. He's the only one who heard what Dr. Volkov said before she died. He might remember something else. General Marks smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. You leave in 4 hours. Get some rest, Captain. You're going to need it. The screen went dark. Colonel Webb touched her shoulder gently. For what it's worth, Sarah, your father would understand why you left. But he'd also understand why you're staying now. Sarah didn't respond. She was already mentally preparing for the surgery ahead, already cataloging the instruments she'd need, the procedures she'd have to perform, the risks she'd have to take. She was back at war, whether she wanted to be or not, and somewhere out there, a man called the Reaper was waiting. The morgue at Landstuhl's subsection Delta existed on no official blueprints. 3 levels below the main hospital, access through a service elevator that required 3 separate security clearances. The kind of security that said, what happens here stays buried. Sarah stepped out of the elevator at 0400 hours. She'd managed 90 minutes of sleep that felt like drowning. The containment suite waited like the entrance to another world. Positive pressure doors, airlocks, decontamination showers, and beyond it all, a surgical theater wrapped in transparent polymer walls thick enough to contain Armageddon. Dr. Elena Volkov's body lay on the steel table in the center, pale, still, keeping her secrets locked inside cooling flesh. Colonel Webb stood outside the containment barrier, tablet in hand. Behind him, two military pathologists suited up in yellow biosafety gear. "Morrison's awake," Webb said without preamble. "Against medical advice. He's watching on a secure feed from his ICU room." Sarah glanced at the camera mounted in the corner. "Tell him if he codes again, I'm letting him stay dead." Webb almost smiled. "I'll pass that along." Sarah began the ritual of suiting up. The BSL-4 gear went on in layers. First the scrubs, then the Tyvek suit, then the gloves, taped at the wrists, then the respirator hood connected to external air supply via a bright yellow hose. The final touch, a second pair of surgical gloves over the first, double protection. Because if Elena Volkov's body contained what they thought it did, a single tear in the barrier meant death. Sarah stepped through the airlock. The hiss of equalizing pressure sounded like the world taking a breath and holding it. Inside the containment suite, the temperature sat at precisely 62 degrees, cold enough to slow decomposition, cold enough to make her fingers stiff inside the double gloves. "Recording active," one of the pathologists said. "Subject is Volkov, Elena, female, age 36. Time of death approximately 11 hours prior." Sarah approached the table. Up close, Volkov looked younger than her file photo. There was something delicate about her features, something that spoke of a life spent in laboratories rather than battlefields. "Let's find out what you were trying to tell us," Sarah murmured. She picked up the scalpel. The blade caught the harsh overhead lights and threw back cold reflections. The blade touched skin. Sarah's hand moved with the precision her father had drilled into her. Steady pressure, smooth draw. The incision opened clean and true, from shoulders to sternum, sternum to pubis. Blood didn't flow. The heart had been still too long. "Retractors," Sarah said. The pathologist moved in with instruments that spread Volkov's chest cavity wide. The ribs cracked with sounds like green wood breaking. Inside, the landscape of human biology laid itself bare. Sarah worked methodically, checking each organ, feeling for abnormalities. 30 minutes in, she found the first anomaly. "There," she said, pointing with a gloved finger. "Under the sternum, scar tissue, old, maybe 6 months. Something was implanted here and removed." Sarah's fingers probed the area. "But that's not what we're looking for. This was a red herring." She moved lower, into the abdominal cavity where intestines coiled like sleeping serpents. She found it tucked behind the liver. A small capsule, maybe 2 centimeters long, titanium casing dulled to matte gray. Surgical tape held it in place against the hepatic artery. "Clever," Sarah whispered. "Hide it where the blood supply is richest, where it stays warm longest." She cut the tape carefully, lifted the capsule free, held it up to the light. Through the transparent end cap, she could see a micro SD card sealed in medical-grade plastic. "That's our data," Webb said. "Not done yet," Sarah replied. Something felt wrong. Elena Volkov was too smart to hide everything in one place. Sarah's hands moved lower, into the pelvis. Her fingers brushed something that made her stop. The uterus felt wrong, too firm, too regular. "I need an ultrasound," Sarah said quietly. One of the pathologists wheeled over a portable unit. Sarah positioned the probe and watched the screen as grainy images resolved into shapes. Her breath caught. 6 dark circles appeared on the screen, perfectly round, perfectly spaced. "What is that?" Webb demanded. Sarah's voice came out steady despite the ice forming in her veins. "Embryos, 6 of them, cryopreserved in liquid nitrogen capsules." She moved the probe, zooming in. "But these aren't normal. Look at the cellular structure. These have been edited. Gene therapy, CRISPR modification." "Modified how?" I won't know until we sequence them, but I can make an educated guess. Sarah straightened. Elena Volkov wasn't just developing a bioweapon. She was developing insurance. These embryos are probably immune to whatever virus she created. If the world ends, these 6 children could be the only ones who survive. The silence in the containment suite was absolute. Webb's face on the monitor looked like carved stone. She was building an ark. The extraction took another hour. Sarah removed the embryo capsules with the kind of care usually reserved for defusing bombs. Finally, she stepped back from the table. Elena Volkov's body lay open, empty of secrets now. "We're done here," Sarah said. "Seal the body, full biohazard cremation protocol." She moved through decontamination in a daze. Chemical showers that burned her skin, UV lights that tried to sterilize the thoughts in her head. When she finally emerged, still damp and smelling of industrial disinfectant, Morrison was waiting. Sitting in a wheelchair, his face was pale but his eyes were sharp. "You should be in bed," Sarah said. "Been in bed for 12 hours. That's 10 hours longer than I usually manage." Morrison's voice was rough, but stronger than before. "What did you find?" Sarah told him. About the data card, about the embryos. Morrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he reached into the pocket of his hospital gown and pulled out a small notebook, the kind seals carried to record mission details. The pages were stained with blood. "I wrote down everything she said," Morrison explained. "Every word from when we extracted her until she lost consciousness." He flipped pages, found what he was looking for. "Here," she said, "the Reaper, Kandahar, American." That's what made it into the official record. But there was more. Right before she passed out, she said something else. "I thought it was delirium, but now..." What did she say? Morrison met her eyes. She said, "He trained them all. He made them what they are. And now he wants to unmake the world." Sarah felt something cold slide down her spine. Train them all. Military language. Someone who taught soldiers. Someone who was an instructor, Morrison finished. Someone with access to special operations personnel. Someone who could recruit from the best of the best because they trusted him. Webb had appeared in the doorway. His face was grim. "We've been working on the SD card. Had to bring in NSA cryptography team. The encryption was military grade. Specifically, an algorithm developed for Delta Force operational security in 2011. Kandahar, Sarah said. That's when we had major operations in Afghanistan. Webb pulled up a tablet, swiped through files. We've been cross-referencing personnel, looking for anyone with the call sign Reaper, looking for anyone who served as an instructor. He turned the tablet around. The photo showed a man in his mid-60s, silver hair cropped military short, face like weathered granite, eyes that had seen too much and forgiven nothing. He wore a Class A uniform with more ribbons than seemed possible for one human lifetime. Colonel Marcus Hale, Webb said quietly. Retired, age 67. Delta Force from 1978 to 2008. 30 years of continuous special operations service. 4 Distinguished Service Crosses. 7 Silver Stars. Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. He taught close-quarters battle tactics to every special operations unit in the United States military. Morrison's face had gone white. Reaper. That was his call sign. I remember now. He taught our CQB course at Camp Gecko. The man was a legend. Could clear a room faster than guys half his age. We all wanted to be him. What happened? Sarah asked. Why did he retire? His family, Webb said. Wife and daughter. They died on 9/11, Tower 2. His wife worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. His daughter was visiting her at work that morning, 11th grade. The room fell silent. After that, Hale changed, Webb continued, became obsessed with preventing another attack, started pushing for more aggressive tactics. When the military brass pushed back, when politicians started talking about restraint, he snapped, started writing manifestos, talking about how America had gone soft. They forced him out, Morrison said. Medical retirement, PTSD. They gave him full honors and hoped he'd fade away quietly. Webb's jaw tightened. He didn't. He went underground. CIA lost track of him in 2010. Sarah stared at the photo, at the man who'd trained her father, who'd trained Morrison, who'd trained a generation of warriors and then turned everything they believed in into a weapon. He's not just helping Red Crescent, she said slowly. He is Red Crescent. It's his operation. The embryos, Morrison said suddenly, that's his insurance, his legacy. He doesn't just want to release a bioweapon. He wants to rebuild humanity in his image. The tablet beeped. Webb glanced at it, and his face went even grimmer. We just decrypted the full data. Hale has virus samples at 3 separate locations: Syria, Yemen, and Somalia. He's planning a simultaneous release in 72 hours. So we hit all 3 locations, Morrison said. Simultaneous raids. With what force? Webb demanded. This is beyond classified. We can't brief this up the chain without risking Hale finding out. Then we go small, Sarah said. Both men turned to look at her. Morrison's team, they've already been read into the operation. Add a few more operators. People you trust, absolutely. Morrison nodded slowly. I can get 4 of my SEALs back on their feet. And I know 2 Delta operators at Camp Gecko who serve with Hale, who know how he thinks. 3 targets, Webb said. 8 operators total. That's not enough. It'll have to be, Morrison replied. Sarah found herself speaking before her brain caught up. 9 operators, I'm going. Morrison shook his head. Negative, Doc. You're a surgeon, not... I completed Ranger School, Sarah interrupted. I qualified expert on the M4 and Beretta M9. I've operated under fire in 3 combat zones. And I'm the only person here who understands Elena Volkov's research well enough to identify the virus samples and properly destroy them. She stepped closer to Morrison's wheelchair, looked down at him with her father's eyes. You need me, Commander. You just don't want to admit it. Morrison held her gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled. Your old man really didn't raise any shrinking violets, did he? He raised a soldier, Sarah said. The Tactical Operations Center at Camp Gecko sat hidden in the mountains of Djibouti. It existed as a black line item on military budgets. Sarah stepped off the C-17 transport into heat that hit like a physical blow. 115 degrees. Morrison limped down the ramp beside her. He'd signed himself out of medical care against every doctor's advice except Sarah's. She'd cleared him for limited duty. Very limited. But he was SEAL Team 3's commander, and his men needed to see him standing. 4 SEALs waited on the tarmac. Hard men with harder eyes. They'd already lost 2 teammates in Syria, and standing slightly apart, 2 Delta Force operators who looked like they'd been carved from the same stone as the mountains around them. The older one stepped forward, 57 years old, salt and pepper beard, eyes like chips of flint. Commander, good to see you vertical. Barely, Morrison admitted. Thanks for coming, Ray. Ray turned those flint eyes on Sarah, assessed her in about 3 seconds. You're General Mitchell's daughter, he said, not a question. I am. Your father was the best operator I ever knew. Trained alongside him for 5 years in Delta. Man had a gift, could read terrain like some people read books. A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. And he talked about you constantly. Said his daughter had steady hands. Said one day you'd save more lives than all of us combined ever could. Sarah felt her throat tighten. He said the same thing about his shooting. He would know. Best shot in Delta Force, at least until Hale came along. The smile disappeared. Marcus Hale was my friend, my mentor. For 20 years, I trusted that man with my life. Then 9/11 happened and something in him broke. You think you can predict him? Sarah asked. I trained with him for 2 decades. Ran missions with him on 4 continents. Yeah, I can predict him. Ray's jaw tightened. He's 67 years old, and he's still the most dangerous man I've ever met. Age hasn't slowed him down. If anything, it's made him meaner, smarter, more patient. Webb appeared from the operations center. He carried a tablet loaded with intelligence reports and satellite imagery. We've got updates on all 3 locations. Syria facility is hardest. Warehouse complex in Aleppo. 40+ hostiles. Heavy weapons. Yemen is Hale's command post. Cave complex in the mountains. 20 hostiles but elite fighters. And Somalia? Morrison asked. Port facility in Kismayo. 10 hostiles. Mostly logistics personnel. Ray studied the satellite images. Hale will be in Yemen. That's his style. Command from the center. But he'll have contingencies. We hit Yemen, he triggers release protocols at the other sites. So we hit all 3 simultaneously, one of the SEALs said. Morrison nodded. Agreed. Ray, you take Syria with 3 operators. I'll coordinate from here. Medical won't clear me for field ops. He looked at Sarah. You and 2 SEALs take Yemen with Ray's second. Negative, Ray said quietly. I'm taking Yemen. Hale is my responsibility. The silence that followed could have cut steel. Ray, Morrison started. Hale is my responsibility, Ray interrupted. I should have seen it coming, maybe could have helped him. Instead, I let him walk away, and now he's planning to kill millions. That's on me, so I'm the one who ends it. Morrison's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. All right, you take Yemen, but Sarah goes with you. What? Both Ray and Sarah spoke simultaneously. Morrison turned to Sarah. Ray knows Hale. You know the virus. If he's rigged any kind of release mechanism, you're the only one who can safely disarm it. You 2 are the team that makes sense. Sarah wanted to argue, but she thought about her father, about all those afternoons teaching her to shoot, to track, to think like a predator. All right, she said. When do we leave? 6 hours, Webb replied. We hit at 0200 local time. Ray met Sarah's eyes. Can you shoot, Doc? Yes. Can you kill? Sarah thought about Daniel Chen, about her father's funeral, about all the ghosts that haunted her. If I have to, she said quietly. Yes. Ray nodded. Then welcome to the team. The Black Hawk flew low over the Yemeni mountains, hugging the terrain like a shadow racing across broken earth. Sarah checked her gear for the 3rd time. M4A1 carbine with holographic sight and suppressor. Beretta M9 on her hip. 6 magazines for the rifle, 3 for the pistol. Level 1 IIA body armor. Comms headset, night vision goggles. Medical kit strapped to her thigh. She was dressed for war and felt like a child playing soldier. Ray sat across from her, utterly still. His face was a mask carved from desert stone. 2 more operators filled out the team. Delta Force. Men whose names Sarah hadn't been told. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 3 minutes to LZ. Thermals show 20 heat signatures in the cave complex. 20 targets, Ray said. Hale's keeping everyone close. The helicopter dropped suddenly. They skimmed over a ridgeline so close Sarah could have reached out and touched stone. The LZ was a flat shelf of rock 300 meters from the cave entrance. The Black Hawk touched down without landing, just hovered 2 feet off the ground while 4 operators jumped into the darkness. Then it was gone. The sound of rotors fading into nothing, leaving them alone in a silence so complete it felt like being buried alive. Ray activated his night vision. The world turned green and gray. He moved forward without speaking. They moved like ghosts. 60 meters, 80, 100. The cave mouth opened ahead, a darker shadow in the darkness. 20 men in an enclosed space with one way in and one way out. Ray stopped at the cave entrance, pulled a small mirror on an extendable rod from his pack. He angled it into the cave, studied the reflection for 30 seconds. He retracted the mirror and made hand signals. 2 guards, 20 meters in. Tunnel opens into main chamber beyond. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands felt slick inside her gloves. She forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way her father had taught her. Control the breath, control the body, control the shot. Ray moved, smooth as water. He rounded the corner with his rifle up and fired twice. The suppressor turned gunshots into harsh coughs. Two guards dropped without making a sound. The team flowed forward, past the bodies, into the tunnel that stretched ahead like a throat, waiting to swallow them. They moved deeper. The tunnel opened into a natural chamber the size of a small warehouse. Lights had been strung along the walls. Generator hum provided a mechanical heartbeat, and scattered throughout the space, 18 men with rifles. Red Crescent fighters, veterans of a dozen wars. None of them looked toward the tunnel entrance. Ray's hand came up. Signals flowed. The team split. Two operators circling left, Ray and Sarah moving right, creating crossfire lanes. Sarah found herself behind a boulder that jutted from the cave wall. From here, she could see 12 targets. Her rifle sight painted red dots on center mass. 12 men who were helping Marcus Hale kill millions. Ray's voice whispered through the comms. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Execute. The world exploded into controlled violence. Sarah fired. Double tap. Center mass. Target dropped. Transition. Next target. Fire. Fire. Transition. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar rhythm. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Smooth is fast. Fast is smooth. The cave became a thunderstorm of suppressed gunfire. Red Crescent fighters scrambled for cover. Some made it, some didn't. Return fire cracked through the air. Bullets sparked off stone. Sarah felt a round hit the boulder 6 inches from her head. Rock fragments stung her cheek. She didn't flinch, just kept firing, kept breathing. 30 seconds. That's how long it took to go from surprise to chaos. 45 seconds. That's when the return fire became coordinated. 60 seconds. That's when Sarah's magazine ran dry. She dropped behind cover, ejected the empty mag, slammed in a fresh one, charged the rifle. A fighter appeared around the boulder, a K-47 coming up, his eyes wide with adrenaline and hate. Sarah shot him in the face from 18 inches away. He fell backwards. She stepped over him, kept moving. The firefight lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, 18 Red Crescent fighters were dead. The 4 Delta operators were alive. Ray had taken a round through his left arm, barely noticed, just wrapped it with medical tape and kept moving. Clear the corners, Ray ordered. Find the virus samples. They spread out. Sarah moved through the chamber with her rifle up. She found it in a side chamber. A laboratory setup that looked bizarrely out of place. Refrigeration units, a containment hood, microscopes, and on a steel table, 3 metal canisters the size of thermoses. Sarah approached carefully. She examined the canisters without touching them. Each one had a biohazard symbol. Each one had a pressure gauge. Each one had a timer. All 3 timers showed the same thing. 4 hours, 53 minutes, counting down. Ray, she said into the comms, I've got the virus, but there's a problem. Ray appeared in the doorway, saw the timers. His face went hard. Dead man's switch. Hale set them to release if he doesn't disarm them. That means he's not here, Sarah finished. He was never here. This was a decoy. The realization hit like a physical blow. Hale had anticipated them, had known they'd figure out his locations, had known they'd split their forces to hit all 3 simultaneously. And while they were busy with his decoys, he was somewhere else entirely. Ray's comms crackled. Morrison's voice came through, tight with controlled fury. Syria's clear. We got the samples. Lost 1 operator. But Hale wasn't there. Another voice. The Somalia team. Facility secure. Virus destroyed. No sign of the primary target. Sarah stared at the timers. At the countdown that ticked away seconds of life. He played us, she said quietly. He let us find the locations. Let us think we were hunting him. Her eyes widened. Oh God, Camp Lemonnier. Ray's head snapped up. What? The base in Djibouti, where we launched from. 3,000 American military personnel. It's the perfect target. Hale knows that's where we staged the operation. He knows everyone who's hunting him is deployed. Her voice rose. We left the base undefended, and he's there right now. Ray was already moving, sprinting for the cave entrance, shouting into his comms. All teams aboard. Return to base immediately. Hale is at Lemonnier. Repeat, Hale is at Lemonnier. The Black Hawk screamed through the night sky at maximum speed. The pilot pushed the engines past safe limits. They had 4 hours, maybe less if Hale decided to trigger early. Sarah sat in the troop compartment, trying not to imagine what 3,000 deaths would look like. Morrison's voice came through the comms. ETA 40 minutes. Syria team is 30 minutes behind us. Where would he hide virus canisters on a base that size? One of the Delta operators asked. Water treatment facility, Sarah said immediately. It's centralized. It feeds the entire base. Release the virus there and everyone gets exposed within hours. Facility is on the west side of base, Ray said. He was studying a tablet loaded with base schematics. Large structure, lots of places to hide. He won't fortify, Sarah replied. He'll booby-trap, turn the whole facility into a kill box. Ray looked at her with new respect. You've been thinking like a tactician. I've been thinking like my father, Sarah corrected. He always said the best defense is making your enemy choose between bad options and worse ones. The base appeared ahead. Lights sprawled across the desert like a constellation fallen to earth. From above it looked peaceful, no sign of the death waiting inside. The Black Hawk landed on the helipad closest to the water treatment facility. Sarah was moving before the skids touched down. The facility loomed ahead. 3 stories of concrete and steel pipes, silent. Dark, except for emergency lighting. Too quiet. He's in there, Ray said. They moved toward the entrance, Sarah with her rifle up, Ray beside her despite the blood soaking through his makeshift bandage. The door stood open, inviting them in. Ray stopped, studied the doorframe, found the tripwire exactly where he expected it, cut it carefully, disarmed the flashbang rigged behind the door. He wants us cautious, Ray muttered, wants us moving slow. They entered. The facility's interior was a maze of pipes and catwalks and shadows. Water rushed through overhead conduits with a sound like distant thunder. Sarah's night vision turned everything into shades of green. She swept her rifle across potential firing positions. They climbed stairs to the second level. The main treatment tanks dominated this floor, each one the size of a swimming pool. And standing in the center of the catwalk between tanks, a figure waited. Colonel Marcus Hale looked exactly like his photo. Silver hair, granite features, the kind of face that belonged on recruitment posters. But his eyes were wrong, cold, empty, the eyes of a man who'd stared into an abyss and decided to jump. He held a detonator in one hand, a pistol in the other. Ray, he said, his voice carried across the open space with parade ground authority. I taught you better than this, charging in without reconnaissance, letting emotion override tactics. Marcus, put down the detonator, Ray said. His rifle was aimed at Hale's center mass. It ended the moment Tower 2 fell with my family inside it. Hale's voice didn't rise. I gave this country 30 years, bled for it, killed for it. And what did I get? A pension while politicians gave speeches about restraint. He spat the words like poison. You don't win wars by making friends. You win by making examples. Sarah stepped forward. Colonel Hale, I'm Sarah Mitchell, David Mitchell's daughter. Hale's eyes shifted to her. Something flickered in their depths. David's girl. A pause. You have his eyes, but not his wisdom. He knew when to walk away. He saved your life, Sarah said. Panama, 1989. You took shrapnel from a grenade. He carried you to the extraction point under fire. I know, Hale replied. I love that man like a brother, which is why it broke my heart when he went soft, when he started questioning missions, teaching the next generation to think instead of obey. His jaw tightened. Your father could have been great. Instead, he chose to be good. That's not what he taught me, Sarah said, her voice steady. He taught me that the measure of a soldier isn't how many enemies he kills. It's how many friends he brings home. Sentimental nonsense, Hale said. The kind of thinking that got 3,000 Americans killed on 9/11. My father died of a heart attack, Sarah interrupted. 67 years old, same age you are now. You know what his last words were? He said, "Tell Sarah I'm proud. Tell her she saves more lives in a day than I took in 30 years." For just a moment, something human flickered across Hale's face. Then it was gone, replaced by ice. Beautiful sentiment won't matter when everyone's dead. He raised the detonator. I've planted 6 canisters throughout this facility. Each one contains enough virus to infect every person on this base within 48 hours. You shoot me, my hand relaxes, the detonators trigger, everyone dies. So we're at a stalemate, Ray said. Not a stalemate, a choice. Hale gestured with the pistol. You can let me walk out of here. I'll take the detonator with me. In 24 hours, when I'm safely away, I'll tell you how to disarm the canisters. 3,000 people live. Except the next time, Sarah said. Because you won't stop. That's who you are now. Not a soldier, a serial killer with a flag. Hale's eyes narrowed. You don't understand what's necessary. This world needs to be purified. I'm not a killer. I'm a gardener, pulling weeds so better things can grow. You're a man whose family died and decided everyone else should die too, Sarah said flatly. That's not philosophy. That's just grief turned into murder. Hale's hand tightened on the detonator. His finger moved toward the trigger. Sarah made a choice. She shifted her aim. Not at Hale, at the detonator in his hand. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Sometimes you take the shot that terrifies you. She fired. The bullet struck the detonator. Plastic in circuitry exploded. Hale's hand jerked back, fingers suddenly empty. For half a second, everyone froze. Then Hale moved. 67 years old, but faster than men half his age. His pistol came up, aimed at Sarah. Ray fired first. The shot took Hale in the shoulder, spun him around. Hale fired back. The round caught Ray in the chest. Body armor stopped it, but the impact drove him backward. Ray charged, closing distance. No time for shooting, just time for violence. He hit Hale like a freight train. Both men went down on the catwalk. Ray was younger, stronger, but Hale had been fighting longer than Ray had been alive. They rolled, traded blows that would have killed softer men. Hale's elbow struck Ray's wounded arm. Ray screamed but didn't let go. Got his hands around Hale's throat, started squeezing. Hale's hand found Ray's knife, pulled it from the sheath, drove it toward Ray's ribs. Sarah shot Hale in the arm holding the knife. The blade clattered away. Hale broke free, staggered to his feet. He looked at Sarah, blood running from his shoulder and arm, his face a mask of pain and rage. You really are David's daughter, he said. His voice was wet. He'd be proud. He pulled a pill from his pocket. Cyanide. The detonator was a fake. Hale smiled, blood on his teeth. Real trigger is on a timer, set to activate in 90 seconds. Canisters are spread throughout this facility, and even if you found them all, disarming them requires a code only I know. Last chance, doctor. Save my life. Keep me alive. I'll give you the code. Sarah stared at him, at the man who'd trained her father, the legend who'd become a monster. She thought about Daniel Chen, about her father, about every impossible choice medicine forced you to make. She lowered her rifle, walked toward Hale with her medical kit. Give me the code first, she said. Hale laughed. Not how this works. Save me, then I talk. Sarah was 3 feet away when she saw the second pistol. hidden in his waistband. He was going to shoot her the moment she got close. Sarah's hand moved, not to her medical kit, to her sidearm. She drew and fired in one motion. The shot took Hale in the forehead. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The cyanide pill fell from his hand, rolled across the catwalk. Silence. "Doc!" Ray's voice was hoarse. "He had the code." "He was going to kill me," Sarah interrupted. She was already moving, running. "And he lied. The detonator was real. I could tell by the circuit board. He just wanted me close enough to shoot." She reached the first canister, examined it with shaking hands. Timer showed 45 seconds. The device was complex. 6 wires, red, blue, green, yellow, black, white, each connected to different pressure sensors, the kind of bomb that took trained technicians hours to disarm. She had 40 seconds and a scalpel. Sarah's breath came fast, too fast, hyperventilating. Her vision tunneled. 38 seconds. Her father's voice cut through the panic. "Control the breath, control the body." She closed her eyes, forced air through her nose, out through her mouth. Once, twice, 3 times. When she opened her eyes, the world had crystallized. 32 seconds. She traced each wire with her eyes, not touching, just looking, reading the device like a surgeon reads anatomy. Red wire, power supply. Blue wire, trigger mechanism. Green wire, bypass circuit. Yellow, redundant trigger. Black, ground. White, failsafe. 25 seconds. Sarah's hand moved, scalpel blade against the green wire. Bypass first. She cut. The timer kept counting. 20 seconds. Her hand didn't shake now. Muscle memory had taken over. The same precision that closed arteries and saved lives. Blue wire, the primary trigger. This was the gamble. 15 seconds. She thought about Daniel Chen, about her father, about 3,000 people sleeping in their barracks. She cut. 10 seconds. The timer stopped. For 3 full heartbeats, Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared at the frozen display. Then her legs were moving, running. Second canister, 8 seconds left. Her hands flew, cut the bypass wire. Timer stopped. Third canister, 5 seconds left. Her hands were shaking now. She could barely grip the scalpel, but she made the cut. Clean, precise. Timer stopped with 2 seconds remaining. She found the 4th canister already disarmed. Ray had gotten to it. Blood streaming from his arm, but his hands steady enough. The Syria team had arrived. They'd found the 5th canister hidden in the basement, disarmed it with 40 seconds to spare. The 6th canister was in Hale's jacket. Sarah pulled it free, found it already deactivated, a decoy. She sat down hard on the catwalk, her legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. Around her, the water treatment facility hummed with mechanical life. 3,000 people slept in their barracks, worked at their desks, lived their lives without knowing how close they'd come to death. Ray sat beside her, his arm wrapped in bandages now, his face gray with blood loss but his eyes clear. "You did it," he said quietly. "Saved the base. Stopped Hale. Your father would be proud." Sarah looked at Hale's body, at the man who'd become a legend and then betrayed everything legends were supposed to stand for. "My father knew him," she said, "trained with him, trusted him, and Hale still went wrong. How do you live with that?" Ray was quiet for a long moment. "You don't. You just keep fighting, keep trying, keep believing that most people won't break." He looked at her. "Like you did. Could have walked away 14 months ago, could have stayed gone, but you came back. That's the difference between you and Hale. He ran toward death. You ran toward life." The CDC facility in Atlanta kept the embryos in cryogenic storage. Sarah had visited once, 3 months after Yemen, stood outside the containment vault where 6 potential lives waited in frozen suspension. Dr. Patricia Chen, the CDC's chief bioethicist, had stood beside her. "We've analyzed them completely. The genetic modifications are remarkable. If Volkov had lived, she might have revolutionized immunology." "What happens to them?" Sarah had asked. "That's above my pay grade." Chen had looked at Sarah. "What do you think should happen?" Sarah had thought about Hale, about his twisted dream of remaking humanity, about 6 children who would never ask to be born into that nightmare. "Destroy them," Sarah had said. "They were created as insurance for genocide. That's not a legacy worth preserving." Chen had nodded slowly. "That's what I recommended too." 3 weeks later, Sarah received official confirmation. The embryos had been terminated, the research data classified and buried. Elena Volkov's final secret died with her. Sarah had felt nothing but relief. Now she stood in Arlington National Cemetery. Spring had turned the grounds green and gentle. Rows of white headstones stretched toward the horizon, like silent soldiers still standing guard. She placed 2 coins on 2 graves. The first grave, General David Mitchell, Delta Force, 1957 to 2023. The inscription read, De Oppresso Liber. The second grave, Sergeant Major Raymond Davidson, Delta Force, 1967 to 2024. He died 3 weeks after Yemen. The arm wound had gotten infected. Sepsis. Sometimes the small wounds kill you after the big ones miss. Sarah stood between the graves, 2 men who'd taught her everything that mattered, 2 fathers in different ways. "I'm staying," she said to them, "to the grass in stone and memory." Colonel Webb offered me chief of trauma surgery at Landstuhl. I accepted. Going to train the next generation, teach them what you taught me, precision, discipline, compassion. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small photograph, creased from handling. Daniel Chen, 19 years old, smiling in his dress uniform. His mother had sent it to her 6 months ago with a letter. The letter said Daniel's younger brother had just been accepted to medical school. Said he wanted to be a military doctor, like the woman who tried to save his brother. Sarah had carried that photo through Yemen, through the firefight with Hale, through every moment she doubted whether she belonged in this life. "I couldn't save you, Daniel," she whispered, "but maybe I can save the next one, and the one after that." She placed the photo between the 2 gravestones. "That's what they taught me. That's what I'll teach others." The wind moved through the cemetery, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh earth. Morrison's teaching too. Naval Special Warfare Center, training the next generation of SEALs. He says every class hears about you too, about what real warriors look like. She smiled. "He calls me every Sunday, usually to complain about how soft the new recruits are, sometimes just to check I'm still standing." A helicopter passed overhead, the sound of rotors fading into distance. "I'm not running anymore," Sarah said. "Not from the ghosts, not from the work, not from who I am." She touched both headstones, cool marble under her fingers. "You didn't raise me to run. You raised me to stand, to fight, to save who I can save, and honor those I can't." She straightened, saluted both graves. "Mission accomplished, gentlemen. I'll take it from here." Sarah walked back through the rows of the dead. Behind her, the coins she'd left caught the sunlight. 2 challenge coins, one from her father, one Ray had given her in Yemen before he died. On both coins, the same inscription, "This will defend." And she would. For all the years she had left, for all the lives she could save, for all the warriors who'd taught her that the truest strength wasn't in killing, it was in choosing who lived. 25 years old, a lifetime of war behind her, a lifetime of healing ahead. Sarah Mitchell walked toward the cemetery gates, toward the world that needed surgeons more than soldiers, toward a future her father had prepared her for without either of them knowing. The impossible shot, the steady hands, the heart that refused to quit. She carried all of it forward, into the light.